Thank you so much for being here. I'm Robin Karstensen, and I coordinate the creative writing program here. And really excited to have all the students here and poets from all over, colleagues, and really like to thank the dean of our college for tremendous support of the arts and humanities, and thank all the chairs, and thank you very much, Tom, our captain of the ship, our poetry ship here. And I want to thank our associate dean, Susan Wolf Murphy, also for being on the helm and steering the ship as well, and just all tremendous support from everywhere. Thank Jackie from Michigan for being here. She heard me. Jackie was in Kingsville and heard Tom on the radio or television, TV, and came to join us. So it's great to have you all here. I'm just gonna say a little introduction about the poets and about Women in History panel. And I'm grateful for our poets whose voices and courage, from the well-established to the new and emerging, are gathered to here in this space to encounter and address an ever-complex world of uncertainty, beauty, and violence. I'm also excited by our work as artists to conjure the creative visions for more and new, egalitarian, harmonious ways of being together on the planet. According to the great knowledge from our feminist history and from our current public civil discourse, the only way we can facilitate change is to bring more women into roles of power, more LGBTQ, people of LGBTQ into power. And we see that happening in our legislature and all, so that's very encouraging. From the political sphere of stolen ground that our forebears have worked so hard to gain for us, to the intimate communities and homes whose sanctuaries have been threatened, to the families separated from their children, and children lost, separated and lost from their families, to the individuals, grassroots organizations, and institutions who are exposing the widespread, deeply entrenched history and culture of violence against women and LGBTQ. We're gathered here today with fearless voices to offer a literary space to facilitate a revolutionary change. And so I want to thank profoundly all of my poets and my colleagues who continue to cultivate this revolutionary community. And I want to thank my poets today on this panel for your artistic vision, talents, and time. Incredibly honored to facilitate the panel with your presence here. And indebted to your sharp, fierce intellect and craft, your nurturing meditations and song, your effulgent affection, grace, and fire. I'd like to first introduce Odilia Galván Rodriguez, a poet, writer, and activist, author of 6 volumes of poetry, her latest, The Color of Light, from Flower Song Books. 2019 is an extensive collection of chronicles and poetry honoring the Mexica, Aztec, and Orisha Yoruba energies, which she worked on during her time living in Cuba and Mexico. Also, along with the late Francisco X. Alarcón, she edited the award-winning anthology Poetry of Resistance, Voices for Social Justice by the University of Arizona Press. Galván Rodriguez has worked as an editor for various print media such as Matrix Women's News Magazine, Community Murals Magazine, and Tricontinental Magazine in Havana, Cuba. She is currently the editor of Cloud Women's Quarterly Journal Online and facilitates creative writing workshops nationally. As an activist, she worked for the United Farm Workers of America, AFL-CIO, and the East Bay Institute for Urban Arts, has served on numerous boards and commissions, and is currently active in women's organizations whose mission it is to educate around environmental justice issues and disseminate an indigenous worldview regarding the earth and people's custodial relationship to it. Thank you, and help me welcome Odilia Galván Rodriguez.
I always laugh at those, those bios we have to write, and then I think, who's she talking to? Okay. Just want to keep my time here. So this panel is women's history, women in history and all of the above. And whenever I think about that, I think about the women of my family and the ancestors, the women ancestors of my family, because that's where how I got my history passed down to me more than I did from any of the men in my family. And maybe that's because the women were the ones that were always around. But before I do that, I want to take a moment to give thanks to the people indigenous to this land. And wherever I read, whether I'm in California and Arizona, Mexico, Cuba, I always say that because it's important to remember the people who were here first before all the rest of us were here. So I just wanted to say aho mitakuyeasi to those people, all my relations. So I'm going to start out with a poem from my first full collection, Migratory Birds, New and Noted. It's a poem for my mother, Migratory Birds. You were born to gypsies, though you didn't want to be. Every spring, when orange blossoms perfume filled the air, your world was packed into a few bundles. Then your family was off, living in tents, trailers, dirt floor shacks. You were born to nomads, though you didn't want to be. Longed to live with the settled and the straight, work in the five and dime, go to school, play tennis. But every time you found a friend, it was time to go another town, another round in a world that made you dizzy. You were born to migrants, though you didn't want to be. From Texas to Illinois, living a blur out a car window, roads endless as fields of crops to be picked by the piece. Never making enough to eat, let alone for the trip back home. Pleading for the traveling to stop, words in the wind, whooshing my ears of the Gypsy King. You were born to wanderers, though you didn't want to be, and when you got the chance, you planted yourself deep in concrete and steel to make sure you or your offspring wouldn't branch out too far from home. You were planted forever. I was born to a life of never change, though I didn't want to be. Same familiar streets, same people year after year, until one sweltering Chicago summer night, the moon full, color of sun reflecting off fields of green, and the sweet scent of lilacs from our backyard helped me to sprout wings so that I could fly away. And then I'm going to read from the latest book, which is called The Color of Light. And this book has taken forever to actually be born. And this is another poem dedicated to my mom. It's called Of Sepia-Toned Memories. Her mother, a sepia-toned woman who always lost, lovely-faced, a portrait of trouble, a nobody someone loved. Her language, the way she moved, a beautiful orchid, deep purple, the way the light spread from her and radiated outward, her image growing, trying to find love she lost from her own mother, being gone, alien to her. Code words written down as letters to get to numbers, the math of it all. The putting of two and two together, getting jazz or corridos instead of simple answers to questions she didn't think to ask. And jazz, open to all kinds of mystery and interpretations, a kind of flesh offering like flowers cut and steeped for strong tea, for listening. And corridos, the stories of pueblos, warm scarves to keep out the cold and guard against the old lies told over and over that never become truths because the people know and sing truths in their own stories. Her life is sewn together like those scarves that keep the people warm and guarded. She has no home, only deep roots and distilled connections. She carries their essence and her ancestors with her around her neck on a silver chain, charms that tell the story of her own sepia skin, about her life's journeys, of all the loves of her life. And then I'm gonna do something that I hardly ever do, which is read a lot of new poetry that I've never read aloud, so this will be interesting. I'm one of those avid, like, people who do NaPoWriMo, which is National Poetry Month, and a lot of these poems are from those. This one's called Grief Camp Mother Country. Abundant trees, breathe, and sunshine sparkles through the shade here, soothing the constant slap tone muff sounds of hands on skin, drums, blend skins into rhythms mixed in delighted voices, and barefoot dance steps on soft brown earth, the smoke from the morning's fire, a slight lingering, a whiff of breakfast coffee, camp style. All this nature can't stop her grief from boiling up, but not over. Since her mother's death, she struggles more, can't breathe sometimes, not even out here among all these open-hearted women. Maybe hers, squeezed shut. She wants to breathe past the shadows, outside, to find peace, be in the moment. Sometimes she is. That's all. That's guaranteed. This one moment. And while grief is palpable, even in sleep, when she can, the powdered blue faces of babies being pulled from the rubble, of mothers, our first country, to whom we pledge allegiance, right or wrong, for they are the only mothers we truly have. They are the islands that form us. They spit us out in sadness of separation, the knife, the cut, umbilici, but invisibly, we're bound for life. And this one's called Undertow. What took her over was his voice of blue waves and Padre Island shoreline, and his camera lens, the reflection of clouds, winds calm, with no gray or foreboding skies, just the sea's face mirrored there, a voice of soft borders that nod you across without question, that don't ask you for papers. Say welcome, you belong, this is your land, I am your relative. That voice of two worlds, two languages, that lilts with its familiar rise and fall, that overtakes you with its soothing. His voice easy on the eyes, like breakfast on holiday mornings. Everything's on the menu, from hotcakes to chilaquiles, café de olla, espresso, even Folgers on the campfire if you want it. His voice of padres, madres, y ancestros, full of love for their land of forever skies, of mesquite trees, of cotton fields and bluebonnets, of the orange blossoms, perfume of home. So I want to say that I don't usually talk a lot when I'm reading, but I kind of like it when people do it, so I'm going to do a little bit of that. I was really lucky to live in Corpus for 2 years, and actually I was on the committee for this festival when it first started, and unfortunately last year I had Zika virus and I wasn't able to make it, but I'm so happy to be back here, and I feel like Corpus is one of my homes, and I really love the people that are my family here, which are the poets. So thank you for having me back. I really appreciate being here. So this one's called We Rise, for Resurrection and Rebirth, and it's kind of a take on the saying the Lakota people have, which is that a nation is not defeated until the hearts of all the women are on the ground. And it's about like when I was sick with the virus and really feeling like I wasn't going to make it. Just about trying to keep going, even when we're having to overcome great odds. And everybody does in their life, no matter how great you have it, we always have something that comes up that we have to overcome. So this is for everyone who's gone through anything like that. We rise for resurrection and rebirth. We rise with the morning, like blue phoenix emerging from the bony gray ash, resurrected and reborn starbursts. We rise with the knowledge that once was, will always be, even if physically absent. We rise night into day on pretty wings. We never stop or question our need or resolve to speak out against injustice. Now and forever we rise out of black holes and abysses so deep, unburying is all but impossible. But we issue forth from mothers long before us, resurrected in mysteries of the divine feminine. We rise, rise, even when it would seem preferable to lie down and never get up again. But our hearts cannot be on the ground, so we rise, rise, knowing our lives are not through. We rise, 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 we rise. So this is a continuation of what I said when I got up here, which was that I feel like the history that I know about my family comes mostly from my mom and my grandmothers and my aunties. So I'm going to read this one. It's dedicated to them. It's called Codices. When pictures are 1,000 words, each symbol makes up a part of the story, etched memory, an accordion folded in on itself, like our childhoods, remembrances that never leave us. Not only our own, but family history handed down from our parents, their parents, and our great-great-greats, shared and remembered, pleated together, depict a mix of the siete generaciones, 7 generations, y sus sangres, all the precious DNA, una mezcla, told in stories, ancient, a puzzle in glyphs of light on thin bark of trees, repurposed into paper that sings the flowery songs on wisps of quetzal wings. I see time. Good. Winds of change. And this one's, this is kind of a longer piece. The day before the anniversary of your death, fierce winds kicked up. Dust and pollen of pines and wild oak volunteers in our garden overflowing. I walk the hills and won't be intimidated by tears that escape their rims. My cat friend that came up that first morning to feign being lost will wonder, but the crows that follow me every day will know these tears have nothing to do with fall, or that you chose to die during my favorite month, even though you were already long gone. Before you stopped talking, before seeing that altar with the 2 bright candles on it at the end of your bed in the rehab center, before you began seeing the faces of your ancestors, before they called you home. Sometimes I wonder where you are now, that you've flown from your broken body. I pick up the phone to call you on Sunday, forget you won't answer, and wonder how much you forgot or chose not to tell me, stories that the memory of our family should know. I want to tell you that since you've gone, my heart has slipped backwards. There are so many unanswered questions that niggle and nudge from the corners of sleepless nights and almost dreams. I worry that there are no answers, that this not knowing will hurt me. This poem was supposed to be about you, and realize it is because you were all the questions, the biggest enigma of my life. This one's about my grandmother, short. Ama Moya kept bees in a wooden peach crate, high in a sassafras tree. We couldn't believe that our grandmother never got stung. Those bees gave her golden honey without noticing that she was not one of them. To us, she was magic. And this one's from my niece Clover. Clover sleeps inside her mother deep, calabash cradle, makes ready for life, rife with mishaps and usual mistakes, but she will be born with a map emblazoned upon her little crowned head, charts of her destiny in swirling circles of moon and stars. And this is my last one. It's a series of, it's 2 crown cinquains put together and it's called Home. Writing, release of pain, then destruction of same, shame in those small confessional pages. Hardbound diary, locked with a small gold key, kept tied on a string under mattress. Easy to find a secret book for all to get a look at her life. They thought was crazy. She writes in code, a lot to track for a girl 12 or 13 years old. Annual Christmas gift, gold. There was Was there, she told her life in words not made up, sins to assign some penance to, real pain, a kind of sanctuary, confession, a release of deeds and actions of others towards her, face to face with shadow, self that seeks release in words on paper, not bound to man, sanctioned. To bless me, Father, for I have sinned, even if more have trespassed against me, I confess. My words are mirrors for all to see, me unmasked, naked and bleeding from lash and stark tongues. Mercy there was none for one such as me, who wrote down all that I witnessed in so-called awe. Thank you.